Hi everybody, this is video 4 in our series on comparative essay writing for A-level, looking at Frankenstein and the Handmaid's Tale, which is the Edexcel Prose Unit 2, but also something that you can use if you're getting ready for your coursework unit as well. So any notes that you make from today's video, or just keeping this video so that you can rewatch it if you need to. So today we're looking at comparative essay structure, and then spending quite a bit of time looking at thesis statements, or how you open your comparative essay paragraph. So you've done your planning already, you've written your introduction already, so you know what your paragraphs are going to be about. Today we're looking at how do you start your paragraph off, what do you say at the beginning of each of your paragraph. And it won't come as a surprise to you that I have to put a caveat in here, because of course there is no one size fits all for essay writing, and there particularly isn't a one size fits all approach to where you put things in your essay paragraph. And in fact, if with Edexcel, they specifically say that in their guidance to teachers who are delivering this specification. And so you can have a paragraph that has more analysis in it. You can have a paragraph that has more context in it. What you want to do overall is to find balance across the essay, and we'll talk more about that as we look at essay writing in the coming videos. So that's my caveat. There isn't a correct way to set up your essay paragraph. What I'm going to tell you today, I think, is a good way to start each essay, but where we go from then is all about meeting the AO. So it's all about understanding how you do that critical and evaluative analysis, and how you explore in detail the influence of context. And so that's what the next videos will be on. The next videos aren't going to go, now you've done your paragraph introduction, you then write this, and then you write this. So that's not how this is going to work. So you need to understand the purpose then of your paragraph. Essentially these then become more like a checklist to check that you've included them, not a sequential order, I need to do them in this order. So I am going to say that I think that every paragraph needs to start with a thesis statement, your arguments, and your comparative support for this. And I think that's just a really effective way to guide your examiner or your moderator for your coursework through your essay. But it also needs to include a comparison, and you can compare the purpose of the text, the intention of the text, the ideas of the text, the context of the text. You can even compare the techniques that writers use within the essay itself. Your paragraph also needs to include a broad range of references to support your arguments. You want to explore and evaluate how your author presents their ideas. And I'm going to do a whole video for you on AO2 and really getting into how do you present your AO2 effectively in your essay writing. And so that will be, how does the writer present their ideas? And then you can critically evaluate the language, the form and the structure that's used. And then in addition to that, you want to discuss how the text, how the writer, how their ideas has been influenced by the social, historical context that they were living in. So this is what we're aiming for. And as you know, hopefully you know what the AOs are. This is what we're aiming for in terms of the content of each paragraph. Then you've got all of AO1, which in addition to your arguments and your references also includes the need for that academic discourse. So you have all of that clever essay writing that you need to be able to do as well. And so it would be really easy to kind of be really tight on the structure of what every single paragraph looks like. And that's the challenge for A-level, and that's what makes A-level literature different from GCSE literature. In the GCSE, you have such a small amount of time to write your essays up that you do need to have quite a tight structure, and it needs to be quite predictable so that you can hit all of the AOs. As you know, A-level English literature is a facilitating subject for university, so it needs to push you forward with your academic writing style, not link to what has gone before. And so I've got some examples here of what comparative paragraphs could look like if we were to kind of color code them, with the orangey color being your comparison, and then the light green being your discussion of text 1, whether that's Frankenstein or Handmaid's Tale, and then your discussion of text 2. And if we're thinking about what we did when we did comparison at GCSE, we probably wrote a paragraph that was similar-ish to the one on the left-hand side. So you've got your comparison at the beginning, and then you've got some writing about the first text, and then you've got quite a quick transition to the second text, and then you've got your writing about the second text, and that's completely acceptable at A-level. And we'll look at how we do that. But on the right-hand side, I've also got another structure, and this one is where we have, our discussion of a broad topic at the beginning, and then this kind of interweaving of texts and discussions because they're so closely linked. And so the structure that you choose will depend partly on the topic that you're writing about, partly on your confidence, partly on how well you know the texts. And so you are going to have to make these decisions and take that control for yourself. All right, so what do I mean when I talk about our comparative paragraph openers? So firstly, I'm not just talking about one sentence, and you'll see as we go through the rest of this video that you'll end up writing paragraph openers that are 3, maybe 4 or 5 sentences long before, so this is introducing your idea before you get into a text. So, and that's important to set up your arguments. So every paragraph that you write needs to start with a clear and relevant argument, and it summarizes the points that you're making about the two texts. Now, you should have already planned those arguments for your 3 paragraphs. You should have those ready to explain. You need to set out your argument, the position that you're taking in relation to the question. So you don't need to be afraid to use the words from the question topic or a word from the question topic, but you need to kind of show where you are in relation to that topic. It's not time for description or storytelling. You definitely do not open paragraphs with your evidence from the text. The reader needs to know what any evidence that you use is supporting. They shouldn't have to guess. And so I'll come in the next video on how to embed evidence. And so we're going to aim for a ×2 thesis statement. And this means that you're making 2 points, or there are 2 sections to your paragraph opener. You've got your central points, and then you expand that. Then you drill down to your text. So, the example that I've got here. The human right to freedom does not mean that individuals have complete agency to act as they wish. So that's my broad point. and you outline something of that type style in your introduction. For Shelley, this means, and then you drill down into Frankenstein. For Atwood, this is, and you drill down into The Handmaid's Tale, and that becomes your paragraph opener. All right, let me show you what this means. So I've got a little kind of visual equation for you. We're going to start with a broad thesis statement, and then we're going to go into a narrow focus on the text. So I've got lots of examples for you. So my broad thesis statement might be something like this. In totalitarian societies, oppression and indoctrination are synonymous. Lies, violence, and fear create passive citizens. So that's my broad thesis statement. You know then that in this paragraph, I'm going to be talking about oppression and indoctrination. And then I'm going to be talking about how that oppression and indoctrination is created by lies, by violence, by fear, and the passivity of citizens. And because these texts are big texts and they've got so much to talk about in them, you're going to have that amount of stuff in your thesis statement because you're going to have so much to say. All right, so you've got that. Then you've got your narrow focus on the text. So you've got your broad thesis statement. Then you get into text one. And for this example, it's The Handmaid's Tale. For Atwood, Gilead in The Handmaid's Tale creates an obviously patriarchal system to control women. And then my comparison. The oppression in Frankenstein is less obvious. Citizens are controlled by social norms and expectations. So I've got this kind of interwoven AO4, this comparison here. I've got this opening broad thesis statement. Then as I drill down and I have this narrow focus onto the two texts, I'm comparing how obvious this oppression is. All right, let's work out how we do it. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to write is a broad thesis statement. In order to write your broad thesis statement, you take your main idea, which is the one that you came up with in the introduction, and then you define that in some way. So you maybe need to say what it means or how it's shown somewhere or why. So you deal with the idea that you're going to be discussing. You create your strong argument based on that, and then you give us a little bit more information. Let me give you some examples and then you're going to practice. So, science is a place of tension for society. That's my main idea. It is both an opportunity for progress, yet it also takes us to a place of the unknown. So I'm defining how and why it's a place of tension for society. Control of the population comes in different forms. At the extreme, through violent oppression, but perhaps more powerfully through the transformation of social norms. So again, my main idea is that control comes in different forms. And then I say what those different forms are. So you've got your main idea, and then you expand that for your reader of your essay, and you're not drilling down into the text yet, you're just giving more information. But you can see these are closely linked to our texts. All right, you're going to have a go. So I'm giving you the main idea. Language gives the individual power. Okay, so I want you to think about that. Language gives the individual power. And then you're going to think specifically about how that happens in Frankenstein, how that happens in Handmaid's Tale, and then you can expand it, define it for us. What power does it give? How does it give power? Why does it give power? And you could use one of these sentence openers that I've given you, it, and you could define it, or when, you could define how that happens. To gives us power to do what? Because, why does it give power? So choose one of those. So pause the video, practice this idea of a main idea, and then broadening it out into this kind of definition to create your broad thesis statements. All right, let's try another one. Hope for the future is essential for human society. Again, broaden that out. Both in Frankenstein and in The Handmaid's Tale, how is hope essential for the people, for the characters in the text? It what? When? To or because? Pause the video. Practice writing this broad thesis statement. You can go back and listen to me talk about it again before you carry on and look at how we narrow the focus then to the texts. Okay, so practice writing your broad thesis statement. Now we're going to drill down into this narrow focus on The Handmaid's Tale and Frankenstein, and this then is this kind of opening, the comparative opening to your paragraph. So your narrow focus on the text is super simple. You just need, how is your idea shown in text 1? How is your idea shown in text 2? And it doesn't matter which of the texts you present first, although the examples that I've given you here may lead you in a direction. So you've outlined your overarching idea. You need to get stuck into the two texts. There are 3 ways, well, there are lots of ways that you can do this, but there are 3 ways that we're going to practice. So we're going to practice a simple comparison, a name checking evaluation, and I'll go through again what name checking is when we get there, and then a comparative evaluation. Let's start off by looking at a simple comparison. So a simple comparison just means that you say, so here's my main idea, here's my broad thesis statement, and for text 1 it means this, and for text 2 it means this. So let's practice. Control of the population comes in different forms, at the extreme through violent oppression, but perhaps more powerfully through the transformation of social norms. So this then is our broad thesis statement about controlling the population. What does that mean for Mary Shelley and Frankenstein? Okay, write that sentence. And then what does that mean for Margaret Atwood in The Handmaid's Tale? So you can say, for Shelley, this means, okay, the control of the population. For Atwood, this means, or this is shown, okay, and you get into something specific in the text. All right, the name checking evaluation then. So the name checking, as you know, is where you give several examples from the text and then you say the one it's the most powerful. And so we practice this because we're practicing showing a wide range of knowledge about a text. And so I've got all of these examples of how this idea is shown in my text. And it's shown in so many different ways because otherwise I wouldn't have come up with it as an idea. I've not chosen to talk about something really niche. I've chosen to talk about something that's really, important and big. But whilst I recognise that all of these examples exist, here's the most important one. So the example that I've said here is, in Frankenstein, we see this through, and then you give 3 examples or 2 examples, A, B, C example. But it is most powerfully shown by. And so we could talk about the female body, or we could talk about that idea of the sacrificial woman who sacrifices herself for her, for men mostly. And so you can say, this is seen through Caroline's character. It's seen through Justine's character. It's seen through Safi's character. It's even seen through the female creature. And we've got these examples that we just list like that, A, B, C. So we're saying in Frankenstein, we see this through the character of Victor's mother, Caroline, through the Confession of Justine, through the European colonial transformation of Sappho. But it is most powerfully shown by Elizabeth's character. And then you would go on in the rest of your paragraph to talk about Elizabeth. So you've got this lovely idea of listing examples and then selecting the most powerful one. So you're going to use the same broad thesis statements. Control of the population comes in different forms, at the extreme through violent oppression, but perhaps more powerfully through the transformation of social norms. Okay, so we're probably looking at the transformation of social norms in Frankenstein, and maybe some of the violence as well. So in Frankenstein, we see this through, and then you come up with your 2 examples and you just list them like I did. Death of Caroline, Victor's mother, the confession of Justine for a crime she didn't commit, but it is most powerfully shown through the sacrifice of Elizabeth, or the commitment Elizabeth has to Victor. Okay, so you come up with your examples. In Frankenstein, we see this through 2 examples, but it is most powerfully shown by. Whilst Atwood shows control, and again, you come up with your 2 minor examples that you want to name check, but it is most effectively revealed by, and then you go for the big one. You know, so you might talk about the searchlights, the spotlights, the box room that she lives in, the fear, the doubling of the handmaids, the constant kind of watching. And then you might say, the big, the examples are the wall, the eyes, all of those things. So many examples of control and oppression in The Handmaid's Tale. What's the big one? Most effectively revealed by? Salvaging? The particution? You choose. Okay? All right. The final one is the comparative evaluation. So this is where you are saying that one text shows this idea better or more powerfully than the other text. And so this is sometimes where we're talking about something where it's really obvious in one text. And so violence in The Handmaid's Tale is really obvious, super obvious. Okay, there's slightly less violence in Frankenstein. There is violence because of William's murder and, the constant desire between Victor and the creature for destruction, but it's not on the scale, it's not the national, global violence that we see in The Handmaid's Tale. And so this is where you are creating a comparison of the broad thesis statement idea and just saying that this one text has more to say about this. Okay, so we've got Frankenstein creates unease by, yet Atwood creates particular unease for the readers by. So you're saying, yes, Frankenstein creates unease, it's, sacrilegious and full of controversy and taboo, but for the reader, Atwood creates even more unease. Or you could say just as powerfully, say you're talking about science, for example. And so you could say, well, Handmaid's Tale definitely creates unease around the idea of science, or it creates, controversy around the idea of science. But Mary Shelley creates particular unease for the reader when she talks about the idea of science. Okay, now we're going to go back to the same broad thesis statement. So control of population comes in different forms, at the extreme through violent oppression, but perhaps more powerfully through the transformation of social norms. So you're going to have to choose now which one you think you want to say is better or is more effective. Not better, that's wrong. So which one is more effective? And there is no really wrong or right answer for this, depending on where your focus is. Because obviously you can talk about violent oppression, and you could talk about that in The Handmaid's Tale, but you could also say, this kind of transformation of social norms. There is in Frankenstein, the people in Frankenstein feel like everything that's happening in their text is completely normal, and that in itself is very worrying. So Shelley shows control of the population by, yet Atwood shows control particularly effectively by. And so you're just drawing out one that's slightly stronger. Okay, so we've looked at writing broad thesis statements, then sentences that have that narrow focus on the text. You have planned the 3 ideas for your essay and written your introduction. Now, I would like you to write your 3 paragraph openers. So you're going to now write what are the opening sentences to your 3 paragraphs. You're not going to write any more than that because we're going to talk about AO2 and AO3. So you're just going to have them on a piece of paper somewhere or on a Word document somewhere, and they're ready to go. So you've got your introduction done and your 3 paragraph openers done. Next time we're going to look at language, form and structure. Send me your 3 comparative paragraph openers and I'll have a look at them, give you some comments, and then come back here for AO2.